Welcome to Stress-Free IEP. You do not need to do it all alone. With your host, Francis Shefter, Principal of Shefter Law. You can get more details and catch prior episodes at www.shefterlaw.com. The Stress-Free IEP video podcast is also posted on YouTube and LinkedIn, and you can listen to episodes through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more. Now, here's the host of Stress-Free IEP, Francis Shefter.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. Today's guest is Michelle Letterly from Primerica, the Letterly Group. And I'm really excited today because Michelle is going to talk to us about finances. So, Michelle, please introduce yourself a little bit more. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm here in Arizona, so hello to everybody across the U.S. I am a former special ed teacher, so I taught special ed for 14 years, studied it, multiple degrees, and all the certifications and things, and loved it. It was truly my passion. The special needs community has been my passion since I think like third grade or so, maybe even younger. But then I had children. And as we know, teacher life is a 24/7 kind of a job. So after I started having kiddos, I left teaching and went into the finance world, which was a shock to me because that's not what I thought I would be doing. But I've been in finance now for 7 years.
Right? For teachers to math, right?
I joke that I still get to teach financial literacy, so I still get to teach. I just don't have 8-year-olds telling me how to do my job. So they're just right. It's always fun when a third grader tells you you're wrong, and you're like, "Wait a second, no, I promise you this is the right answer." So I've been in finance for 7 years. Having my office here in Arizona, I do work with clients across the U.S. So I help them with like budgeting, doing debt elimination, saving money on like insurance, and then we take that money that we save and redirect it towards investing for the future. But I do specialize in working with families who have children with disabilities. Both of my children are what I call neurospicy. So both are on the spectrum and have some other difficulties. And my son is actually twice exceptional. So my son will be 5 in December. And my daughter is 8 and she's non-speaking. So I've got a very wide range on the spectrum of with my children. So I live it, breathe it, sleep it. It's my life. So the special needs community is my community.
Definitely understand that one. Both of mine are neurodiverse. I know there's such a huge thing of like, is it neurospicy? Is it neurodiverse? What works? But you know what? It's kind of like whatever works for you works, right?
I always use neurospicy because my kids are redheads. So
there you go.
Like, they're spicy anyways because they're redheads.
Right. Got to get the spicy in there. I definitely understand that. And I know finance is a huge thing. I mean, I've had on my show before, I've had somebody that does special needs trust, and I had somebody more recently that does ABLE accounts and talk about those, which are two very important things. But then also like what people don't realize, and we talked about this a little bit on the ABLE trust one, that getting an inheritance might impact things. And especially if our children are getting state or federal funding for extra supports, and how does that work? So what can you tell people about like how can this insurance, the inheritance and money impact your child's ability and benefits?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different things when it comes to life insurance with our kiddos if they're getting those state and federal benefits. When usually you do your paperwork and your interview, they'll ask you if you have life insurance. You do generally have to send in a copy of your life insurance. And what they're looking for is to see if your policy is a term policy, meaning it's just pure insurance, or is it what we call like a permanent insurance, so cash value, whole life, universal life. There's a whole bunch of names for it, but it has a savings account attached to it, basically. So they're looking to see if you have money in that account, because then that counts as a resource, which counts against you. Or if you have one in your child's name and they have money in that account, that's a resource, right? So that counts against them. As we know, they can't have more than about $2,000, right? So that's one thing we look at. So if we have a child with a disability, we want to make sure for us, us as the parents, and if we get insurance on them, that it's term insurance. So it just means it's just pure insurance. Okay. Then with the parent side of the life insurance, we never, never, never want our children to be the beneficiary. Never. Do not do it. Especially, even if your child is not neurospicy or, they're totally typical child. If they're under 18, don't do it. The problem with that is if they're under 18 and you leave them as the beneficiary, that money will go to your estate. And then they don't get that money till they're 18. And now it's taxed. So now they're going to get, penalties basically on top of that. They're losing some of that money. So we want it left to either a guardian, or the best option is that special needs trust. Okay. That's where it's really, really protected. When we have a beneficiary, so for myself, when I pass away, my beneficiary will get a check, right? They get a check for the amount. So we'll just say $500,000. Okay. That's going to be direct money to that guardian because they're over 18. It does not count as income. It's not taxed or anything like that. It's just a pure check, $500,000. Here you go. Okay. So that's why we want it as a guardian, an adult, but better off as that, as a trust, because then it goes directly into that and it's basically untouchable. What can happen is if we're leaving it to our children or we're doing, not doing a special needs trust, then the government's going to go, we want some of that money to cover some of the stuff that we've been paying for all this time. Because now you have money, right? And with an ABLE account, you're capped at 100,000. So, with a check of $500,000, you couldn't even put all of that in there. That would cause a problem there and make them lose their benefits as well. So it's very important that we're, one, having term insurance, two, not putting our children as the beneficiary, making sure it's an adult, a guardian, but better off as the trust, right? And making sure that we're not having any kind of savings or other resources in their name.
Right. And it's so interesting that you say that, because I remember back when I did my life insurance, nobody ever explains what's the difference between term and what's the difference between whole life. I don't even think half the people selling the insurance know the difference or why, right?
A lot of them don't. You're correct.
Yeah. And especially like knowing that's such an important thing to know, that it's going to have an impact on your child. And if you find out after the fact, it's too late. It's not like you can pedal it back and take the money back and then, but your child's benefits are cut off. And I know there's a lot of people with the thought of like, well, if you have the money, the government shouldn't be paying for it and stuff like that, which yes, to an extent, but it's not the same dollar for dollar.
Right. And well, you think about it, to raise a child nowadays, a typical child from birth to 18 is a little over $300,000 is about what you would spend. Okay. On average, for a child with autism, it's 1.1 million.
Oh.
So I had that $500,000 coming in, but how old is the kiddo, right? Like, and then what does their future look like? Because you really need to look at things. So my son, who's going to be 5, right? He's twice exceptional. He's verbal. He has, his difficulties, but then he's highly, highly gifted in math. I can, tell that he will be independent as an adult. He'll be able to get a job. He'll be able to live on his own, maybe get married or whatever he wants in life, right? Whereas my daughter, who's 8 and is non-speaking and has her difficulties, it's most likely that she is not going to live independently. And she's going to need some type of care for her entire life. Right. That looks different. You're going to need a whole lot more money. Right? Whether even if she goes into a group home or some kind of assisted living of some sort, that's expensive. That costs a lot of money every month. That's thousands of dollars every month for that. Plus then, her having her guardian or her executor, right? Being able to have money there for them to be able to buy her the things she needs or, take her on vacation or, whatever that is, right? I don't know what the future holds for her. I hope she's going to be independent, but I don't know. So I have to plan for 2 totally different scenarios of what's going to happen with my kiddos. And if there's money there that, with that life insurance and it goes into that trust, that just gives them that cushion, right? It makes it just easier. We know money makes things easier, right? If you've got the money, if you don't need the benefits, then fine. Yeah, then you don't need to take them. But we also know that, therapies, copays, that alone will bankrupt a family. I mean,
yeah.
I have a friend that has 5 children. 2 of them are neurodiverse, and they have 19 between them. They have 19 therapy appointments a week. Could you imagine
wow.
You're like, you would meet your
Oh my goodness, right?
in like a month. So.
Right. I mean, that's crazy. And that's if it's a copay,
Right.
plan, like what my kids are out of network for most of their therapies and stuff, because it's just the way it is. Getting into somebody that takes insurance isn't always possible.
Right.
And so, it's
Don't
realize how much, and it's not like you said before, taking a kid on vacation and stuff. It's usually not even for that stuff. It's for the therapies and for the, how we need to adapt our home or adapt our car, or or the fact that mom can't work or dad can't work because we have to take them to all of these therapies and appointments and stuff. And so there's also that issue that comes about.
I mean, anything that relates to our kiddos usually is not cheap. So, of course, my kiddo only eats certain foods. And of course, she loves a protein bar that she's liked since she was 1. It's the only food that stayed consistent. They're $3 a piece and she eats like 4 a day. So I'm like, I mean, we spend a couple $100 a month just on protein bars. I mean, that's insane for most people, right? Or you think about adaptive equipment. She has, she cannot ride a regular bike, so she has a special needs bike. Thank goodness there was a scholarship program that her OT told us about and applied for it for her, and we got it. But if I had to go buy that on my own, it's like $2,000.
Oh, jeez. Wow.
Who's an extra $2,000 to buy their kid, a special needs bike? That's not usually at the top of the list of things that we're getting, right? So we just know whatever it is that our kiddos are going to need, it's going to be more expensive. So there just needs to be more money. So having that life insurance just helps make life a little bit easier. And like you said, then if I pass away when the kids are still young, there's plenty of money there. I have it set up, same thing, that the guardian can continue to work and hire a nanny, or hire care, or, there's money there. If they don't want to work, then they can have, a salary, right? Also worked in things like if you're going to have a nanny or a caregiver, like there's money set aside for buying them like a vehicle, buying an SUV or like a Tahoe. So that way I know my kids are in a safe vehicle and, the caregiver is not having to be responsible for transportation, right? We're providing that, right? So it's just those little things that you think about, like, wow, if I wasn't here, what do I want for my children, right? So then we got to account for that in dollars as well.
Yeah, which is always a hard thing because none of us want to think about it, what's going to happen if we're not there. But it's the hard conversations that you have to have, because I've seen it too many times that people don't plan appropriately, and life is short. You never know. You never know what's going to happen. And recently somebody passed away who had she has a 4-year-old child on the spectrum, and totally unexpectedly, wasn't even sick. And, we just found out about it this weekend, and she was, I want to say 30, early 30s. And who knows? Right. So now there's, and it's scary because you don't know, like, she wasn't sick. Like it was just, and so for those of us, like, I know it's a conversation we don't have to have, we don't want to have. I know it's a hard conversation, but it's one that has to happen, and you need to plan, because if not, then what happens? Like like financially and all the other stuff, who's going to have guardianship, who's going to get this and who's going to get that, and will your child be cared for? And, all of that stuff, and then what life insurance should look like. And I know a big thing is like, should people have policies on their children?
Yeah, great question. So first, I just want to say, yes, having that conversation is not fun, but it needs to be done. So I tell my clients, hey, let's just have the conversation and then it's done. And we don't have to worry about it anymore, right? But if you keep putting it off, then I have to keep bringing it up to you, right? And I also joke with them like, hey, nobody's getting out of here alive. So we all know we're going to die at some point. We just don't know when, right? So it just, try to make it lighthearted at times as well. As far as children, I do recommend having life insurance on your children. I have it on my children, and for a couple of different reasons. God, knock on wood, they're going to live a long, healthy life. But if something were to happen, because I myself have buried a child, my daughter died 10 years ago when she was only 12 weeks old. And 10 years ago, that was her funeral and like her burial, like her plot is not even a full-size plot. It's actually meant for like urns, was 13 grand.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's 10 years ago. So I can only imagine what it'd be now. One, you would have that, the life insurance would cover, the funeral, final expenses, right? Help pay off any medical bills, because sorry, but sometimes they still want their money. Some are nice and work with you. I had to deal with that of like, I'm paying this bill, my kid's not even alive anymore. This is great.
Wow.
So you got to have that stuff. But then also for the fact that you have a cushion of some money so that you can take time off and grieve, right? Who wants to go back to work after 4 or 5 days or whatever you get off for grieving, right? So the father of my daughter, he got a couple of days off, and she died on a Wednesday, and he was back to work on Monday because he didn't have time off, and they didn't give him bereavement. I thankfully had plenty of sick days, and I took a 12-week leave of absence from teaching. Yeah. So obviously our grief and grieving journeys were very different, because I was able to stay home and sit in my sweatpants and eat M&Ms for breakfast and just not have to deal with the world, right? So and do what I need to do instead of having to deal with daily life, right? So you'd have that cushion of being able to pay your mortgage and your bills and take time off, and then that way, if your job doesn't allow you that time, they say, well, then you're fired. Well, now you've got money to cover you in the meantime, and then you can find a new job when you're ready, right? Hopefully they don't do that, but I know it's a thing. So, but I also look at it as, let's make sure that they're covered, because they're going to live a long, great life, and they're going to need it when they're an adult as well. And the sad thing is that once a child is diagnosed with autism, medically diagnosed, they're not insurable.
Really?
Yeah. So
I did not know that.
Yeah. So there's other disabilities.
And I was just going to say, I want to make sure we put that out there now, in the sense of, if there's anybody listening that thinks their child is on the spectrum and is looking at going to get diagnosed, get it right. Exactly. I mean, and that, again, that's something that's part of the reason we have this show, is that parents don't know. We have neurodiverse children. We don't know.
I didn't know until I started in the industry.
Right. We talk to other moms, we talk to other dads, we talk to parents, and even still, you don't know a lot of this stuff. And so that's the thing. So if you're listening and you're thinking your child might be on the spectrum, go get the insurance. If that's something you believe in and want to do, go get the insurance now, because you can always cancel it later. But if you want it, you're not going to be able to get it later. I didn't realize that on the spectrum couldn't get insurance.
Yeah, so if they've got Down syndrome, cystic fibrosis, cerebral palsy, any of those major disabilities, they're not insurable. Our company, though, does cover some of those. So we do allow people with cystic fibrosis to apply. There are some that we're getting approved. Same thing with Down syndrome. We have an age range. So between the ages of 16 and I want to say 35, they can apply. And obviously it depends on, medical conditions. So how severe is the heart conditions and things like that. And then same thing for autism. So I have been able to get some individuals, some children that are medically diagnosed, approved. Does take some work. Again, it also depends on the severity of their autism and are there other medical conditions? So it's all individually based, which it is with adults as well. I mean, if an adult has had 3 heart attacks, they're not going to get insured. We're not going to insure them. If they've got multiple medical conditions, they're not going to be insured, right?
Yeah, it's just interesting about that autism would be one. I can understand Down syndrome because I know there's always a lot of other health issues with it.
Right.
That's just but with autism, it's it's a it's a neurological disorder. There's not other health issues usually, right?
Well, so that's what I had asked underwriting about. I'm like, I don't get it because it's, exactly, it's neurological. The problem is it's such a spectrum. There's so many different, and certain, some kids do have seizures with it. Some do have,
Right.
the behavioral disorders that are with it, right? And such a wide range. And autism is relatively newer, right? In the sense of being recognized, right? So there's not enough data and research for them to know, like, hey, this is consistent with autism. Whereas with Down syndrome, there's enough history. We know, age range. We know tend to have heart conditions, lung conditions. They need other therapies, right? So we kind of have like similarities within that disability. So
Right.
it's easier to like figure out. So that's why with autism, we have to like go into a deeper dive of really looking at the whole picture of their medical history and being able to decipher from there.
That makes sense. But like, yeah, it's not what I would it's not what I would think of, but
No, yeah, they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, yeah, it's
and
not.
that's right. And that's why it's important to talk to financial advisors but you're not considered a financial advisor. You're considered.
Correct. So it is a full service financial firm. I personally am not fully licensed yet. So I would be considered more of an insurance agent, but I have my own agency. I have people in my office that are fully licensed that are financial advisors though. So I have them do the ABLE accounts and things like that.
Got it. So they could do, and you said you're in Arizona, but you serve nationwide. Like, what is that with licensing and accounts and things like that?
Great question. So I'm actually licensed in about 15 different states currently. So I can always do a Zoom call with somebody, no matter where they are in the US, just to go over things or, provide information or do a review. If they are wanting to move forward with a service, if I'm not licensed in that state, then I can get my license. It's actually really easy once you're licensed in your resident state. Basically, for me to get a license, say I'm not licensed currently, like in Maryland. So I would just go online, I fill out a form, I pay a fee, and it takes about a week for my license to be official. And then I can write business. And
beautiful.
Yeah, it's quite nice, actually. Yeah.
With lawyers, doctors, psychologists, therapists, like, oh my God. Like,
I know, I get that all the time. People are like, you don't have to take another test or anything. Nope. I just pay a fee, and it just depends. The fee depends on what state it is. So it could be anywhere from like Ohio and Michigan. It's like $10. It actually cost me more to have it appointed to the company than to actually buy the license. But then if you go to like let's see, where am I thinking? Massachusetts is like $300. So like
that's still nothing compared to what waving into a bar is.
So like that, it varies. So like obviously California and Hawaii are like the most expensive licenses, but
right, makes sense.
I don't have any clients in Hawaii, so it's fine.
Right. And so for you to get but that's for the insurance, because I know with ABLE accounts, you have to open it you don't have to open it in your state, but you want to open it in your state because, like, I know at least in Maryland, there's that tax benefit. Right.
So same thing with investments. Same thing. They buy their license for that other state. Once they're licensed in Arizona, if that's where their residence is, then they can purchase their license for Maryland or wherever. And then with us, with our ABLE accounts, is through American funds. So we're able to work with people all over the US as well.
Interesting. Okay. Because I know there are some financial advisors and stuff that can only do certain states and can only do certain programs. And then, if you don't know to ask those questions, you can get yourself in these situations where the person's not fully able to help you in what you need, right?
Right.
And that's,
yeah.
Go
The
ahead.
other great thing about if parents are looking to put money away for their kiddos, the ABLE accounts are great, right? Once they're getting SSI and everything. But even prior to that, if they want to do a 529 college savings account, that does not count against them as a resource either. So I have that for
Right.
my children. So, you can be putting money into that. And I know it's called a college fund, but you actually can use it before then. Because I know for like my son, he had got accepted into the gifted preschool for this year. And it's $1,000 a month for the preschool. And I was
Wow.
like, okay, an extra 1,000 a month. Okay. I could pull from his 529 and use it to pay for the preschool because it's still an education.
Oh,
I'm using it
cool.
for education. So, or I wanted to say Brinley gets older and they're both in public school right now. Say I want to put her into a private, specialty school. I can use the money from her 529 to help pay for that tuition. So it's basically just an education fund. So,
Right.
So I really like those just for our kiddos, because then, it's allowing the money to grow, but it doesn't count against them. So that's
Right.
always the best option. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I know, because I know if the Roth IRAs were recommended, and like, again, you need to know somebody that knows everything,
Yeah.
or knows at least that they don't know. You know what I mean?
Right. And that's going to be willing to say, hey, I don't know that for sure. Let me do
Right.
some research. Let me talk to some people. So
Right.
I always let people know, like, hey, if you're already working with a really good insurance agent or advisor and you're happy with them, stick with them. But if you have questions, I'm always here. Like, I'm happy to chat with the other insurance agent and just give them the information saying, hey, well, they have a child with a disability that's getting, Social Security. We need to make sure they have this and not that, because it will affect those benefits. So they're still going to get the business. They're still making the money. I'm not taking a client, but my goal is to make sure the parents
Right.
have the information and get the right stuff, because we don't want to lose those benefits in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. And that makes sense. And that's, like, again, part of the reason for the show is to let people know, like, now, hopefully people are any of our listeners have a list of questions to ask when they go to talk to an insurance agent. Like, what experience do you have with special needs? What are your recommendations? What's the difference between a special needs trust and ABLE account, a 529, like, what would you recommend and why? And like, how will that impact? And it's just like things that, I mean, I know before I started doing this, like, I never would have even thought of, like, how is this going to impact SSI?
Right.
Like, it's just not something that people would consider. Or like in Maryland, we have the autism waiver. Like, how's it going to impact that, or the list, or, all this other stuff. And yeah, it's like knowing the right questions so you can vet the people. Because unfortunately, everybody's well-meaning. I don't think anybody's out there to be,
Right.
you know what I
Malicious.
mean?
Yeah.
But sometimes people don't know, and you don't know what you don't know. And
Right. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people out there in this field that they don't know because they don't live it, right?
right,
They're not surrounded by it all the time. And they haven't been through the process, so they don't know what questions are being asked when you do your interview for Social Security and, for all tech. Well, here we call it all techs. I don't know what you guys call it there.
yeah,
But, all that stuff, right? So, and they're not doing it intentionally to, rip them off or put them in a bad situation,
right,
but it truly can. I've even met with other individuals who say they specialize in this, and I'm like, okay, awesome, and asking some questions with like, so tell me, do you know how Social Security works? And they're like, no. I'm like, do you know about ABLE accounts? They're like, what's that? And I'm like, okay. Like, I'm asking some kind of basic questions that if you're in this field and that's going to be your
yeah,
specialty, that you should know, right? I'm like, please don't say you specialize in this.
right,
Like you have a few things to learn still. Sorry,
right,
because you're going to end up hurting your clients in the long run, right?
right,
That's the problem. So yeah, I mean, definitely having a list of questions. And again, like I said, I'm always happy to consult with people. I get people in other Primerica offices, or even some that are in different companies that have reached out to me like, hey, I'm working with this client, has a child, that's this age with autism, they'll ask me a couple questions like, hey, if that was my client, here's what I would do. This is what I would recommend. And explain why, so that they can explain it to their client and know that they're putting them in the correct insurance or the correct investment, or, that's not going to affect those benefits.
Right. Which is so important. And it's just, I mean, it's all about protecting our kids. It's like, I hear other people of like, you're protecting your assets and you're just trying to, some people call it scamming the government. It's like, no, you're not, because it's not like there's only this pot of money. And if one person gets, the other person doesn't.
Right.
It's all, and it's there for a reason. It's there to help families out, yes. We might be doing it so that we can take a vacation, but why shouldn't my kids get to take a vacation?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, we're not saying we're not working for it. We are working for it, but there's that extra everything that's needed.
Right. Yeah. Vacation for our kiddos. That's like,
yeah.
That's a work. We've done one vacation because it was, and we didn't even make it through the whole vacation because my daughter was standing at the door at 5 a.m. going, all done. That's how she does, signs all done. And we're like, okay, let's see if we can get her. Like, we have tickets to the San Diego Zoo today. Great.
No.
Get through the zoo. But after that, she was like, all done. So instead of staying that night, we loaded up the truck and headed home. And, we were just out that money for the hotel stay. Like, we knew that going in, that like she might not make it 2 nights. She made it 1 night, so that was huge. But we know that going in, but still a chunk of money that you're like, we just gave it away. Didn't even get to enjoy.
And even if you do get to go, it's not always enjoyable. Like people talk about, like, and it's hard because it's, like you think about, like, I'm just thinking about Disney, and I know, when we went to Disney, I was not one of those, got to be there at rope drop and you got to stay till the end. And you got to, I was like, you know what? We're going to get up. We're going to have breakfast. When we decide to leave, we're going to leave, so that my kids didn't get overwhelmed and overstimulated and overtired and overhungry. We could actually enjoy the 8 hours we made it versus not totally enjoy the 12 hours we were there,
and be stressed.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. I would love to take my daughter to Disney. She's obsessed with princesses. So she, at summer school, somebody must have taught her about Disneyland, because then she, for like a week, was asking to go to Disneyland. I'm like, it's not like something we can just be like, hey, today we're going to go to Disneyland. Like,
right.
It's like 3 months of planning for that. I'm going to need some time to get that figured out.
I will say that I know Disney has gotten really good with sensory, and will do, like, if you let them know in advance, like a lot of the places these days let them know in advance that low sensory, they will make accommodations and do what needs to be done, in the sense of, because our kids on the spectrum is not going to stand in line for an hour to meet a princess. It's just not going to happen, So I think they do like a separate, like, low sensory type meeting and stuff, which is great. But still, it takes a lot of planning, because you need to, plan it and have your plan B and plan C and plan D, because as we know, we plan and they do what they want, and it's not, you can't force it. You know what I mean? Like with our kids. And that's the hard thing, is that I don't think people understand.
Well, yeah. And you think about, even like for me to take the kids to pretty much anywhere that's going to be any kind of vacation, or like, even if it's a whole day thing, right? Like, you're going to go to, I'm trying to think, like the pumpkin patch, or, here we have our state fair in town. Not that I would take them, because that would be chaos, but something big like that. It has to be me, their dad. And a lot of times we have to bring another person, because we got to have one person per kid. But then if somebody needs a break, or, I got to go to the bathroom.
Yes.
We still need to have another hand for that other child, right? Because I got one that will, like, not wander, but like he'll get so focused into something that then, like, forgets that he's supposed to be walking with us. And so then, like, I have to keep tabs on him. And then my daughter, she'll elope. So, and, a lot of times, like, she's very, like, when she's dead set on something, you're not changing her mind. So if she's like, I'm done, she's done. Or if she does not want to go on that ride, but he does, it's a problem, right? So you have to have extra set hands. So now I'm paying for somebody else to come with us, so people don't realize what more. And now, I'm buying their food because they're helping us out, right? So there's more that goes to it. So if for us to go on vacation, we would have to go get an Airbnb, or I'm paying for another hotel room for them to stay in, right? So it is expensive, and people who aren't living this life just don't get it,
Right. And they don't get the mental toll also. I know, my next door neighbor and I were actually talking about how mornings can be challenging with our children. And it's like, and you know what? I'm sure it's challenging for neurotypical kids too, but it's just like, it's that extra level of, having a fight every single morning about getting to the bus is just, it's draining, And so what do we do and how do we plan for that? And like to bring it back around of like, and how do we plan for that if God forbid we're not here anymore, or, even insurance in the sense of if we're incapacitated in some way that we can't do the level, of that. And because I'm assuming you do all types of it. Do you do other insurances?
Yeah, so we can do auto and home, small business insurance. We also do Medicaid, and then our life insurance.
Right. And then like long-term disability?
I don't do long-term disability, no, but I know somebody who does. Yeah.
Got it. But like, those are all things that you don't even think about when you're young, you're healthy, you have young kids, you don't, why would you think about it? You know what I mean? Like, it's just not something you think about. But it's so important too, because it can so negatively impact like everything in your child's life in the future.
Well, and I mean, like you mentioned earlier, your friend that passed away, there wasn't sick. They were in their early 30s. They were probably healthy, right? Well, most people actually don't die because they're old and got sick. I think there's so many other ways to die. I know this is kind of morbid, but I'm in insurance, so like I see it, right? You think about there could be a car accident. There could be, think Mother Nature, hurricanes, tornadoes, monsoons, lightning. Like there's so many things, snowstorms. I mean, we just had all the hurricanes in Florida, and there was like, I don't know, 100 people that passed away. You're like, they didn't think that's how they were going out, but that's what the universe planned for them, apparently. We can't control the other 330 million people in the US, right? Like I can't control the guy next to me that's driving his, truck, right? Like, I don't know. And then you think about, unfortunately, all the mental health issues and, the situations with like shootings and, I mean, there's fires. I mean, there's just some people don't realize there actually are a lot of ways to die. And the odds of you dying just because you're old and you got pneumonia, not very likely, actually. So it's more likely going to be something else that takes you out.
Yeah. And it's, like it's such a morbid conversation, I know, but it's also like for me, having that extra insurance, like just know that I don't have, like, that's one more thing I don't have to stress about. You know what I mean? Like we have so much as parents, we have so much on our plates and we're so much. And it's like to think about like, oh my God, what if I die? Who's going to take care of my kids and all that? It's like, have that conversation. Like you said, have that conversation, get the insurance, get everything set up, and you don't have to have that conversation anymore. It's done. Okay. You might want to revisit it every year to review it or something, but for the most part, it's done and you don't have to think about it anymore. You can now check that off your list. And it's so important. So if people are watching and they're like, okay, well, wait, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to start. Like, what's the best thing for them to do if they're like trying to figure out what to do and where to start?
Okay. So if they haven't done anything, first you need to figure out who's your guardian's going to be. And you need to make sure you talk to that person, make sure they want to be the guardian and they're willing to do it. Right. Because I've had that problem with my, I have several people who are willing to take my son, but my daughter's another question. They're like, I don't know if I can commit to a lifetime of that. Right. And that's a big deal. Right. So you want to make sure you have a guardian and that they are on board with that. Right. You do want to get your life insurance in place before you do your trust. So get life insurance going. Then you can work with your attorney to get your will and trust going, because you want to have the life insurance done so that you can put that into how the will, like breaking it down on how you want the money spent or where it should go or what it's used for, right? Before that, because otherwise, if you start doing the will and trust and you don't have your life insurance, you go back to add it later. Now you're paying another fee to have it amended and things like that. So, so guardian, life insurance, will, trust. I also recommend to people like make a booklet of their information. So like their insurance card, their list of their doctors, list of their therapies, preferences. Like I put together stuff as if like, if I didn't get to talk to anybody about my kids ever, and some stranger had to walk in and be like, I have to work with these kids and take care of them. Basically, here's the manual. Here's the manual for my children, right? So all those important things that like what are their, triggers, or, what's going to set them off, or, there's certain things of like, or any allergies, things like that. But like, I know for like my daughter, she has a lot of food allergies, but kiwi, she can't stand kiwi. You can't even cut a kiwi in front of her because she'll start gagging. Like she just can't have kiwi in the house. Okay. Like don't have it near her. Right. Things they wouldn't know. Right. It's going to set her off. Or like with my daughter, when you go to the doctor, right. And the nurse does, the height and the weight and blood pressure and all that stuff. And then they say, okay, we're all done. I'm like, you can't say all done, because then she thinks we're all done with the entire appointment.
We're going home. Right.
We're done. I'm like, you have to say finished.
Right.
You don't say all done until we're literally all done. Right. So
walking out the door.
Otherwise you're going to be in for a fun 30 minutes.
Yeah.
A lot of screaming and, grumpiness in the office. So, just some of those little things that would make that transition easier for whoever was walking in to take over.
And for your child.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's easier for her if somebody knows and understands. And that's a great idea to have like a booklet. Cause I'm even thinking about like, if I were to sit down and write all of the things down, I probably would forget them. Like I would forget things because they become natural to us,
Right.
And so like, if I have a book, then when I think of something, oh yeah, let me go write that in so that it's, you have it all organized. That makes sense.
And so like I have one here, and you can go onto like Canva. That's what I did. And so like, this is my manual. So like when we have a new care provider or babysitter, so there's a whole thing. So it's the babysitter's guide. Okay.
Oh, awesome.
So you just go into Canva and you can print it out, fill it out. But it's like, here's all their, all their allergies, my contact information, who's the emergency numbers, what's their bedtime routine, meal schedule, more emergency info, their doctor's information. This is their weekly schedule. This is like about the kids and, their age, and if they take any medications, what are their favorites, technology limits and TV rules. So like you can put all kinds of stuff in here. And then you can just make a list of notes, right? So you can go on. I just got that off of Canva and just edited it to our, put our name, and then, took out things that might not be relevant to our kiddos, and then added things that are relevant to my kiddo.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes so much sense. I like that. That's such an awesome idea.
And then you have
so
that
if people,
and it's then it's easy to go and edit it if you need to. Like you already have it in Canva and saved. Then this is not their favorites anymore, so take that out and add this in, right? So it's easy
this food is right. This food is off the list. That food's on the list, and like my kids, they loved macaroni and cheese for the longest time until the one day they didn't. And now neither of them will eat it. And I can't tell you how many boxes we have because it was on sale. We'd buy it.
Right.
Like, nope, they won't eat it anymore.
Yeah.
But things change. Kids grow and they change. And if people want to reach out to you, like if they want to, see like, hey, maybe you can help, what does that look like?
Yeah. So I can give my phone number or my email. They can call me, text me, email me, just reach out if they have questions or if they want to set a time to get more information, or they want to set a time to do a review, I'm happy to do that. With Zoom, it's amazing. You can do all kinds of things since we're in different time zones.
Right.
And I do have clients literally from coast to coast. So they know that they can just email me or text me, and we get something set up that works for their schedule.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I know we'll have them in the show notes when this gets fully published. So thank you so much. This was so informative and went like places that I didn't even expecting us to go, but it was so informative and so helpful on me on the personal level, as well as I hope a lot of our listeners of knowing,
I hope so.
Hey, let's plan. What can we do?
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure. I love being able to talk special ed with people. It's so nice when people understand your language.
Right.
You've been listening to Stress-Free IEP with your host, Francis Shefter. Remember, you do not need to do it all alone. You can reach Francis through shefterlaw.com, where prior episodes are also posted. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, and sharing the show with others through YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more.